I spoke earlier about the palace state of Sri Lanka, a country I know well, that I have visited, a veritable jewel in the ocean. I believe it's possibly the most beautiful country I have ever visited, and its people almost sublime. But it hasn't had its troubles to seek after a very long and bitter civil war. A period of peace and stability has now been considerably upset by the crash in fuel poverty, in the fuel economy, and in the knock-on consequent effect on food prices and the rest. Enough from me. Asanga Abeyagoonasekera is a geopolitics analyst, professor, author, and columnist, and he kindly joins us now. Asanga, I'm very sorry for your troubles in the beautiful land of Sri Lanka. Can you explain to us what the situation is and how we got here?
Well, it's a serious crisis right now in Sri Lanka. Many are hungry. According to the United Nations, 22% of the population are hungry. So it's more of a humanitarian crisis right now. There's no fuel, there's no money to pay for the fuel imports. Sri Lanka requires about $523 million every month, but the foreign reserves is not there. And so the basic medicines, the basic essential commodities are not there. So it's more of a liquidity crisis of no foreign reserves, and also an insolvency issue, which is difficult to pay the large amounts of borrowings Sri Lanka has got. Overall, the policy prescription which was carried out during the last 2 years, I think has a serious impact and resulted this issue, especially introducing tax cuts and also the inward policy prescription carried out by the Rajapaksa government, which was the reasons for this crisis. So Sri Lanka was a fragile state, even starting from 2019, from the Easter Sunday bombing, but it moved from a fragile state to a crisis state, and today I can say it is becoming a failed state, unfortunately.
That's very serious. These are very serious words. Sri Lanka is not some desert island. It's a country of 22 million people, and geostrategically very importantly placed. It has neighbors that can very well be affected by this kind of economic virus and the political instability that accompanies it. So let's start drilling down on the policies of the last 2 years. Is that the timescale that you think all this intensified to this critical mass in? And why? Who did it and why?
Well, the Rajapaksas came into power in 2019, the president, and followed by his brother. It was the first time that Sri Lankan political history we had a sibling regime, the two brothers as president and prime minister, and also multiple family members, including agriculture, defense was also part of it, as well as many other youth. Totally six family members were ruling the country. One ministerial portfolio, for example, the agriculture, he was in charge of chilies, onions, commodities. So all the portfolios. So basically the entire economy was run by the finance minister was another brother. So this was heavily, I would say, it was shifting from the democratic fabric that Sri Lanka had towards a more authoritarian rule. And the first time, again, we had more than 26 military appointments in different ministries, even including archaeology. So ministries, the customs to all of the ministries. It's more than the Pakistan portfolio of militarization. So these are the dangers that the Rajapaksas introduced, and the protest was, which came, starting from this year and then moving towards burning the houses of the parliamentarians, and the Prime Minister Rajapaksa was forced to step down. So it was a sort of I would say, accumulation of all this authoritarian rule, as well as the suppression of human rights concerns, and also introducing, they carried out from the Prevention of Terrorism Act, multiple arrests, interference of judiciary. 1 year ago in June, I wrote this piece, The Coming Anarchy in Sri Lanka, clearly mentioning that if you continue in this path, we will get into an anarchic situation where we'll have multiple, we had 3 cabinets for the last 2 months. Now we have a prime minister who has 1 seat in the parliament, which shows the political dysfunctionality. So with the economic crisis, there is political dysfunctionality. And so what we have is basically a serious crisis. We have, basically asked help from India, China, many others, the European Union, all the countries. It's a situation that I think we have never faced before. But the protesters want the president to step down. What happened was the family members stepped down, except for the president. So now there's an arrangement with the new prime minister, who has 1 seat in the parliament, supported by the president's fraction, the political party. So that's what's happening right now.
And the army are remaining loyal to this president, are they? That seems very foolish of them if they are.
Well, first it was moving towards a more militaristic model, and there was fear because of multiple emergencies that was that was introduced by the president, emergency rule. But I'm happy in a way that it moved not towards the military direction, but it moved towards a more towards the parliament, sort of a more democratic path. My fear was because of the heavy militarization that it could move towards like Myanmar. But we were sort of fortunate to move towards the legislature, to the parliament, and work from the immediate appointment from a new prime minister who was the prime minister 5 times. This was his 6th time becoming prime minister. But the problem is the new prime minister who was appointed has only 1 seat power in the parliament. So there's a kind of a breach in the social contract also, because he was not elected by the people. So what the protesters want is election, overall system change, prosecuting the corrupt. For example, there are multiple corruption scandals during the family rule, as well as prior to that. But there were multiple interference to the judiciary, to the independent organizations. And one particular dangerous structural adjustment which the president introduced was the 20th Amendment to the Parliament, which basically gave more power to the president, taking power from the Parliament, and taking out checks and balances, independent institutions. So the new Prime Minister has promised a new amendment called the 21st Amendment to reverse it back. So more than structural adjustments, I think what is required is basic food, immediate sort of relief for the people, because people are dying if it goes on like this, without medicine, without basic essentials. There have been sort of violent incidents at the fuel stations, shootings. It can trigger into, because Sri Lanka, as you know, probably like we had 3 decades of war. two full-blown youth insurrection back in 1971 and 1989. So it can trigger the ethno-religious line. I mean, there is heavy, it's a volatile society, so it can trigger anytime with the social distresses.
Well, that was to be my last question. Is there a risk that this will ignite again the well-known ethnic and religious fault lines in Sri Lanka, or is the opposition to this president and the regime spanning all communities?
Well, if they keep on practicing, I would say, few days ago, they appointed a casino boss to the parliament. But these are not the most prudent measures or more objective measures. Again, to fight the food crisis, they appointed a member of parliament who has accusations on drug trafficking. So, I mean, these are not I don't see as the most the prudent or the objective measures. So Sri Lanka requires immediately to go to IMF. I mean, they have been discussing with IMF, but there is debt restructuring required and all that. So if the government does not take, and if he keeps on, agitating the protesters by appointing a casino boss to the parliament, this is political favoritism. And this would upset further. And definitely, I see a pattern that it is going towards a full-blown an insurrection, because between the people who has no money, or like the one that United Nations have just predicted, 20% of the population, as well as the multiple university students and everybody who's really angry now. So it can trigger. I mean, it is a situation that this could trigger, I would say, any moment if the government does not address these issues and immediately, the social concerns, as well as addressing what the protesters want. Because if the president remains and the family members goes, then that is not the answer. The answer is the autocratic, the autocrat to step down, not and also to listen to the protesters' demands. And that's really important. And the international community should support the protesters to re-democratize the society.
Asanga, thanks for illuminating a very dark picture indeed. Thank you for talking to us on the Mother of All talk shows. Now, don't forget, you can donate to the show. You can go to our website,